the Florida Writer Podcast, a discussion about writing and other things.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Florida Writer Podcast with your host, Alison Nissen. And today I am lucky enough to be with Armand Rosamilia. Armand, welcome to the Florida Writer Podcast.
Thank you. I've been a listener for a while.
Oh, that's awesome to hear. Could you give us a 60-second elevator pitch about who you are and what you write?
I am a full-time author. This is my 12th year of being able to write for a living. I write mostly crime thriller, horror. I've done nonfiction. I've ghostwritten romances. I've pretty much hit almost every thing out there at this point. And that's it. I'm a New Jersey boy, currently in Jacksonville, Florida for 20 years now, but I'm still a Jersey guy at heart.
Well, welcome to Florida, and I'm sure New Jersey misses you, but right now it's the dead of winter, and I'm sure you'd rather be in Florida.
Yes, all the pictures from my friends and everybody else, especially up in Buffalo, shoveling 47 feet of snow, and it's 63 degrees right now here, and I have all the windows open, so it's nice.
It's very conducive weather for writing, isn't it?
Yes. Yes, it is. Especially when you get that 3:00 every afternoon shower in the summer. It's nice. It gets nice and dark. It's like, okay, we're going to get the rain. Let's get some writing in, and then let's go lie down and curl up with a book for, the 20 minutes that it rains every day.
Well, that's the best part about being a writer is that, reading is required.
Yes. I wish I had more time for more reading, but I'm glad the time is spent writing instead.
Well, how did you become a writer?
I was 12 years old. My brother was 10 or 11, and we were awful kids. We used to beat the crap out of each other all the time. And my mother was a stay-at-home mom. And it was right around the end of, I'm guessing I was going into sixth grade, maybe seventh grade. And it was like the end of a school year. And we got into, I don't even remember what we fought about, but me and my brother were like beating each other up. And my mother literally said, "You're punished for the summer. Until school starts, you are not leaving the house." And she stuck to it. And my brother got to stay in our room, and I got stuck in my parents' room. And so I'm in the front room watching all the kids on the block playing kickball and football and running around out there. And I'm stuck in her room. And there's no television. This is the 80s. So there's no television in mom and dad's room. There's just a wall of my mother's books. And I was like, I guess I'll start reading. I always liked to read, but I was like, I guess I'll start reading. And I started reading anything with a giant spider on it, anything with a monster on the cover. My mother still is a huge horror fan, and I discovered Dean Koontz, and that was it for me at 12. I mean, my mother was still is a huge Stephen King fan. I thought it was too wordy, and Dean Koontz just kind of got into the meat of the story, and it was more adventure things, and I just blew through every paperback she had, and that was it for me. That was like, somebody can make a living doing this, and I was like, I'm gonna do this, and I told my mother that I'm gonna be a writer when I grow up, and she still says to this day, "You should have said, your wish should have been, I want to be a famous rich writer. That would have probably been better for you." So I was hooked from that moment on. I read everything he has, that I still do. As soon as something is available, I pre-order it, and I've read pretty much everything. And that was my love of reading. And that was actually a really good summer. Looking back, at the time, I hated it, but that was actually a really good summer. And I was glad that when school started and we actually were allowed to go out and be with other people, that I still kept reading. And I've read to this time. My mother gave me a Amazon gift card for Christmas this year. She always gives me a Stephen King paperback because she's trying to convert me to being a Stephen King fan. She's still a huge Dean Koontz fan too, so I'll give her the newest Dean Koontz book. And she bought me a bottle of Writer's Tears, the Irish whiskey for Christmas too. So my parents are fully supportive of me doing this, and my mother's my number one fan, although there's a lot of stuff I will not let her read that I've that I've written.
All right. I love your story. I think it's a great way to start out where, it was like through punishment and not necessarily the way you wanted your summer to go, but it definitely stepped up to be the platform for your life.
Yeah.
When you decided to become a full-time writer, a lot of writers dream about being able to do that. What was the start? How did you become able to support yourself?
My journey is like everybody's is a little different, a little weird. I wrote a ton in the 90s when I was in my 20s. I had gotten published in 1988. I was still a senior in high school, and I had a short story published in a zine. Anybody young out there needs to look up what a zine is. And I wrote a ton of short stories through the 90s, and then life got in the way. 2 divorces, kids. I was working a dead end retail job, and I was writing at night. I was sneaking. I was living with a girl, and she hated that I wrote. She wanted the, nice house and the white picket fence and all that. And I was going to get that by being a retail manager, which was what I had been for about 1 million years at that point. And I hated every day of it. I hated getting up at 4:00 in the morning and going to work 6 days a week for 15 or 18 hours a day and not making any money. And so I always wrote. I would sneak up, and she once told me, she said, I wish when I got up in the middle of the night and you were up on the computer, for once, I wish you were looking at porn. I wish you weren't sitting there writing. Like, she's like, I would feel better. Like, and I'm like, why? Why would that make you feel better? And like, so she just wanted to crush my dream. And when we broke up, it was right after I'd lost my job. So they wanted to move me to a farther store. And I was down in the Daytona area. I was living in Palm Coast down in the Daytona area. They wanted me to go all the way to like Maitland and work out there with no extra money. And it's like, I'm driving an hour now. Now you want me to drive 2 hours one way. And so they basically said, well, if you don't want it, then we're gonna let you go, but you can collect unemployment. And I said, perfect. And then I got really serious, and I got very lucky because a publisher who I'd written some short stories for, and I just finished a couple of books. This is back in like 2009, 2010. They were working with a Hollywood company, like this little B movie, and they wanted somebody to write their movies. They wanted to write books they were going to put based on movies. They had this weird idea that if they had a print version of it already, nobody was going to steal the idea, although none of the ideas were even close to original. And I started doing that, and I made a lot of money real quick doing that, and it enabled me to wipe out all of my debt, pay off my car, pay off my credit cards, take care of my kids, and then write my own stuff, and then start to write my own books. And I ended up doing, over about 4 years, I ended up doing 14 books for them. And some of them were ghostwritten, some of them have my name on it. They're all awful. They're all very cheesy, mostly zombie, things like that. There's a movie called Navy SEALs versus Zombies, a very original title. I wrote the treatment for it while they were filming the movie. So they would send me the dailies every day, and I would have to figure out where are we in the movie. And I would have to basically write that scene and then put it together. And it was a lot of fun doing it, and the money was great. And so that was really the kickoff for me to be able to say, you know what, I don't want to ever do retail management ever again. I don't want to leave the house on a Black Friday. I don't want to deal with people anymore. It's nice to be able to just stay home for days and days and not have to deal with anybody but one of my kids or my wife.
What a great story. What a great way to start your writing career. You mentioned before that you've written in so many different types of genres. Can you walk me through some of what you've discovered by working with so many different genres?
I think the reality is it's all as a writer, you just want to write a good story. You want to write good characters. You want something that's interesting. So genre-wise, whatever it is, you have to engage the reader. You have to write something that you would like to read. So a lot of times I start there. So I've been on Twitch for about almost a year now. And Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I'm on live at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I write a new story. And all I'll have is a title. And that's literally it. So today I wrote, and I started a new story called The New Waitress. And it's loosely based on, we went to a new restaurant last night, an Italian restaurant. And the waitress, we asked for bread. And it took her like forever. And when she brought the bread out, she was on my left, she put the bread down, and she took my plate, which still had sauce on it, for the bread. I'm Italian, you got to dip bread. And she walked away with my plate, and I was so upset, and I was like, who does that? You didn't even ask if I was done, or I would have said no. So that became the kind of the kernel of the story for a crime thriller, like a mob story that I wrote today live while people are in the chat room talking to me. I had no idea where the story was going to go. It could be a horror story, it could be supernatural, it could have been anything. So for me, it's more of, I'll start with characters. I'll start with one or two characters and just build the story from there. I'm a total pantser. There's no outlines. There's nothing. It's literally, I'll have a kernel of an idea and I start writing. So it used to be forever, from like as a teenager all the way up until about 10 years ago, all I really wrote was horror stories. And I got kind of bored with that somebody has to die or there has to be a monster or whatever. And I started writing because of the other things I was doing with the movie company. They had me ghostwrite a romance, a military romance for them. And I wanted to scream this because they gave me like a 5-page, this woman had written this really bad, cheesy story. And I needed to get that to 40,000 words, this, love story. And I expanded it and I wrote it and I hated it. But I did learn that I could write this. I could sit down and write a romance. It's just really the characters, just the interaction of the characters. Instead of one of them wanting to kill the other one, say, it's like that Hallmark movie, that act 1, act 2, act 3. And my wife watches those all the time. And I'll walk through the living room and I'll watch it for like 3 minutes. I'll go, oh, hey, we're firmly into act 2 now. That now they're fighting. All hope is lost. And she's like, will you get out of here? Would you go in the other rooms? Leave me alone and watch my Hallmark movies. So there's still that structure no matter what genre you're writing. And to me, that's the fun of it. That's fascinating, to create a character and say, okay, what can I do with this person? I have this person now. Am I going to kill them? Are they going to be assassinated? Or are they going to fall in love? What's going to happen to these people? And that's what makes every story for me, fresh.
How do you write live on Twitch? Are people feeding you ideas?
No, people are just in the chat room talking to me, making fun of me, making fun of each other, talking to each other. It's other writers. Sometimes, a couple times now, I've said, all right, somebody give me a name. Okay, somebody give me an occupation. Okay, somebody give me a place of business. Okay, that, and I've written a couple of crime thrillers based on short stories based on that, which is a lot of fun. Because I'm literally writing off the top of my head. So I will have a title, like it's, I start at 1, it's like 12:30 and I'm like, oh, let me put Spotify on. And I'm just listening to music in the background. And then a lyric or a song title will hit me. And I'll say, okay, there's my story. Or because of going to that restaurant last night, okay, the new story is The New Waitress. This is a story I'm going to write today. And so that's it. That's, for me, that's kind of the fun of not knowing what I'm going to do when I sit down and I start writing. And I'm writing in spurts, and then somebody asks a question, or I'll say, hey, what are you guys doing for New Year's? What are you guys doing? Anybody doing anything exciting this weekend? Anybody do anything exciting last weekend? Or, hey, this person really upset me. Let me vent for 15 minutes instead of writing. So it's a lot of fun of doing it. And it really, it really gets me going, because I know I can't just sit there and stare at a blank page for an hour. I literally have to write 1,000 words in this hour. So that's kind of the fun of it.
Are people watching what comes up on the screen, or you just?
No, people are watching. So they're watching my webcam small in the corner, and they're literally watching the page I'm writing on, every letter going along. And people will comment. People will jump in sometimes and comment about the why did you put it that way? Why did you why are these two people talking like this? Is it's all really different questions. I had a person a couple weeks ago, and I used the word unfortunately about this crime thriller, noir crime thriller, and the guy, this woman realizes that she thinks she's a drug mule, but she's really going to be sold into slavery, and her daughter is back in San Diego, and she thinks she trusts that person. And the guy, one of the guys who's captured, said, unfortunately, your daughter is worth a lot more than you, but we weren't able to convince you to bring her with you. And somebody was like, why unfortunately? I said, well, it's more like sarcasm. And I explained my reason for using that word. And it was kind of, at first I was like, I wanted to say, shut up, I'm writing my story. And I was like, you know what? You're asking a question that maybe a reader would ask. And it made me think about why I'm using certain words on stuff. So it makes it interesting. People will give comments all the time. I'll say, I need a name of a woman. And a good friend of mine, Jay Wilburn, who passed away in October, he's the one who got me started doing the Twitch stuff. And he would always say Beyonce. Anytime I would say, hey, I need a guy's name, he'd say Beyonce. And I say, I'm not using Beyonce in this. And then he wrote a story on Twitch the next day about Beyonce. The character's name was Beyonce. So we used to joke back and forth, and it's little in jokes. Certain authors are on while I'm writing, and I'm adding things about them to the story and whatnot. So it's a lot of fun.
That's really interesting, because I'm thinking about that, the one comment with the word unfortunately, and how that really makes you grow as a writer, because it stops you and you ask, is there a better way to say this?
Right.
And that is, to me, that's the whole part about being a student of writing. And anyone who's not a student of writer, but writing and they want to be a writer, is missing the boat, because it's always about growing, because your audience will always be shifting as well.
Yeah. For me, I consider myself a pulp fiction author. So I'm not Tom Clancy. I'm not, writing these huge Jack Ryan, intricate political things. I'm writing basic stories about basic people and just fun. So for me, sometimes I get lost in not using the big words, just write the story. Just let's get this first draft done. And little things like that make you think, should I be using the word unfortunately in this? I know it means that he's kind of being sarcastic, but obviously the reader didn't understand. And then I'll throw it back to the group. I'll throw this 15, 20 people in the chat, and I'll say, what does everybody think? Give me your honest opinion on, do you think I should use this word? Do you think whoever this person is being a little ridiculous about it? Do you think they're right? I want to know. And that's the fun of it too, because sometimes in the chat, people will throw things out there, which I think is fun. And it shapes, sometimes you ignore it. Sometimes you're like, I already know where I want to go in this story. But sometimes it's like, oh, that's, that might be a cool thing about this person, So it's just you just kind of play with it. And for me, it's every day I learn something, writing every day I'm learning something, and I just have fun. I never want to go back to retail management. I never want to go back to that, although I got a ton of great characters over the years that I kill off in a lot of the horror stories. So at least that part is fun.
What do you do with these short little stories that you create?
Most of them are I'm just writing them. Every year, November 21st on my birthday, for the last 3 years, I've put out a short story collection of 21 short stories. And some of them could be all the way back from the 80s, and some of them are from the 90s. And it's just a mix of short stories. And probably about 5 or 6 are brand new each collection. So every year I'm going to put out another collection. I've put out a bunch of collections in the past. And so this is kind of the the complete short fiction of Armand Rosamilia, volume 1, 2, and 3 so far. And I eventually want to get all of my stuff out there. Now, that being said, I wrote 54 short stories on Twitch this year. So not all of them are good. Not all of them are ones that we're gonna, that I'm gonna add to a short story collection at some point, or send to an anthology or a website or something. So I think I had 4 or 5 short stories put out this year, which is very low for me. Usually I'm doing 7 or 8, published every year. So I really didn't do a lot with short stories in 2022. So I would imagine next year I'll go on Duotrope every week and find something to write.
Well, Armand Rosamilia, how can people get in touch with you?
ArmandRosamilia.com is my website. You can find me on Twitch. You can find me. I'm on Patreon. You can find me. I'm still big on Twitter for as long as Twitter lasts, and basically on all the social media. I've claimed my name everywhere, but probably the easiest way is Twitter or Twitch at this point. You can always find me on those.
And Armand, are you ready to switch to our rapid fire questions?
Let's do this.
What is your favorite social media platform?
Right now, I'm going to say Twitch. I'm going to say Twitch is my top. It was Twitter for many, many years. I've been on Twitter since almost the beginning. Well,
for most people, probably don't even know what Twitch is. Could you give us a little bit of a clue?
It's really for gamers. For me. It was, I'm not going to go on Twitch because it's for my 20-year-old kids who go on there and watch other people play video games, which makes no sense. And then Jay Wilburn got on there and started writing, and he started selling books. He actually started, talking about his books and things. And I said, let me try it. If nothing else, it's a way for me to write more stories. It's a way for me to be put on the spot with people watching that I have to write. And there's a big community of writers on there now that will go and write live, or they do book reviews or different things. It's kind of like TikTok. I'm also on TikTok, so I'm doing videos on there all the time. As an old man, which is funny because my youngest is 22, and she helped me with TikTok, and so she's filming my first video, and I said, hashtag book talk is the big one for that, and I said # book talk, # book talk, and she's like, no, Dad, it's hashtag. I said #, it's a #, and we kind of joked around back and forth, and I got so many comments. Of course, I got a couple of people are like, no, it's a #. Well, I know it's a #. I'm 53, not 153. I get it. But so I do goofy stuff, the old man on TikTok with all the young kids kind of thing. So that's a lot of fun too.
What is your future dream car?
All right. So I am not a car guy, which is funny, but I always tell my wife when we get rich, and because you got to think positive. I want the Bandit from Smokey and the Bandit. I want that Trans Am. That's when I was a little kid. That was the dream car. And we were in Nashville. And we went to the Country Music Hall of Fame, and they have the car there, or one of the cars. And she took a picture of me in front of it. And I said, "This is the dream." And she's like, "Yeah, with the T-tops and everything, like that's ridiculous." And I said, "That's the car."
I believe my husband's had 2 of those, so
Wow.
I get you.
Yeah.
He was about 16, 18 at the time, but all right. Final question. What is your favorite after dinner treat?
So I am a very big chocolate fan. So there has to be chocolates, and this time of year it's great because my wife's vendors give us tons and tons of chocolates, and bourbon. I am a bourbon fan, so I have to have some. I have to have a couple of fingers of bourbon and a handful of Oreo cookies or something like that. And that's why I am. That's why I'm fat, because I cannot stop eating cookies.
Armand Rosamilia, thank you so much for stopping by.
Thank you very much. This is a lot of fun. I appreciate it. And like I said, I'm a fan of the podcast, so keep this going.
Fantastic. I love hearing news like that. Please, everybody, share it with me. Makes me feel good. This has been another edition of the Florida Writer Podcast with your host, Alison Nissen. What do I say next? Oh my God, my brain. I have been like on vacation and my brain is like, wah, wah. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. I'm like, I don't even know what day of the week it is. I just know it's the day after my birthday.
Oh, so, happy birthday.
Fantastic. Well, once again, thank you so much for stopping by.
Thank you very much.
You have been listening to another edition of the Florida Writer Podcast with your host, Alison Nissen. Alison out. We're all done. Armand Rosamilia is a New Jersey boy currently living in sunny Florida, where he writes when he's not sleeping. He's happily married to a woman who helps his career and is supportive, which is all he ever wanted in life. He's written over 200 stories that are currently available, including crime thrillers, supernatural thrillers, horror, zombies, contemporary fiction, nonfiction, and more. His goal is to write a good story and not worry about genre labels. He is also a successful podcaster, the Mendo Method podcast with co-host Chuck Buda, talking about writing and publishing. He also loves to talk in third person because, yes, he's really that cool. You can find him at armandrosamilia.com for all of his information, as well as the random things he enjoys. If you're on Twitch, check him out. For more information on the Florida Writer Podcast, visit floridawriters.org. Until next time.